pleasant good afternoon to you, our YouTube listeners, our YouTube followers. It's a pleasure coming to you one more time. The last time we spoke to you, we were dealing with the topic of abuse, and we spoke about verbal abuse the last time. And we promised you that we were going to come back and talk to you about physical abuse. We are not dealing with this topic because we are experiencing it in our relationship. Actually, it's the opposite. We might abuse each other other ways, but not in verbal or physical abuse. Our abuse is, if there's such a term as good abuse. But we just want to share with you for a couple minutes about physical abuse, and my wife will make her introduction and then we get into the topic.
Hello, everyone. Hope you all are doing fine. Happy holidays to you. Wishing you all the best for the remainder of the year and all God's richest blessings going into the new year. So, as my husband stated before, we spoke about the topic of abuse, and two specific points we touched on, or two specific areas that we touched on, were verbal abuse as well as physical abuse. Last week we did a YouTube video on verbal abuse. This week we're going to do on physical abuse. And physical abuse is a bit more intense. Not that verbal abuse is not intense as well, but physical abuse is a lot more, it's more of a negative impact on a person. So briefly, I'm just going to give a definition on physical abuse. And physical abuse, in terms of a definition, is when one causes trauma to another person, inflicts hurt on another person by way of bodily contact. So as we're dealing with a pandemic, we find now that there's more abuse happening because people are more in a confined space, and therefore there's no outlet as to expressing anger, expressing frustration, expressing depression, just expressing how you feel in terms of what is going on. We're not saying that's justification for physical abuse, but we find that it's on the increase more so now, with people are losing their jobs, people are losing family members. We're just in a state that's confusing, conflicting. So we just want to now point out some of the things that are happening and how we should go about finding a solution for what is happening. So just sit back, and as we touch on a few pointers, I hope that this will impact someone's life, or if you know someone that's experiencing physical abuse, you may impact that person's life in terms of helping that person to get the help that they need. So stay tuned as we continue.
Thank you, my wife. Isn't she beautiful? And that's one of the reasons why I love her so. Physical abuse. And the question on the floor today is, what is physical abuse? And before we get into physical abuse, we want to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, that is Chat with the Jacksons, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Um, Physical abuse, as my wife have just explained from a woman perspective, what is physical abuse? I'll be coming to you from the men side of physical abuse. Um, Throughout this chat, my wife and I might clash head because I might be seeing it one way and she might see it another way, but at the end of it, we're gonna come together as human beings and respect each other when it comes on to physical abuse. And I look at physical abuse is when you, as a man, which the Bible said, husband, love your wife as Christ have loved the church and gave himself for it. Now, if Christ loved the church and gave himself for it, we know Christ would not beat up on the church because he loved the church so much that he gave his life for it. Also in Genesis, it said that a man should leave his mom and dad, leave home and cleave to your wife. Then you two will become one flesh. So I join these two scriptures together to say that if Christ loved the church, Christ is not going to beat up on it. And if you would join with your wife and you become one flesh, then you're not going to beat up on yourself. It's a little ignorant, and I'm sure you will agree that you're going to just have a conversation with self and said, self, listen, I didn't like what you did this morning, so I'm just going to beat up on you. And then you're going to slap yourself. I'm sure they will look at you and say that you're getting crazy because you're not just going to beat up on yourself. But when you get married and in that relationship, you two become one flesh. So you would not abuse yourself. So you should not abuse your wife based on the Bible. Physical abuse is when you take your partner for a beating stick. As soon as your partner might open their mouth to say something, their opinion, how they feel about something, then you're treating them less of a person because you want to send those words right back down our throat. That to me is physical abuse. Now, physical abuse just don't jump up and jump out just like that. Physical abuse come with some signs. And these signs that we have to be very, very careful and look for these signs, because there are times that we are saying that we are so in love that we didn't see this side of him. You know, we were taken away by his looks, his six packs, his dressing, that we don't pay attention to these signs. But when we get in our quiet corner after a year or maybe 6 months and we start to reflect, then you will see that these signs were there before. We just didn't pay attention to it. So we want to highlight some of the signs that you ought to pay attention to before it gets to the physical side. We are not saying that you should be comfortable even with the verbal abuse. We dealt with that last week. So we know that if you go back and take a look at the video, you realize that we also stamp out verbal abuse. But there are times that the verbal abuse carry over into physical abuse. So that's why we want to stop it from the forefront before it happens. As we see these signs that we are going to talk about, then, we address it. So please pay attention to these signs before you get into a relationship. And one of the signs that we want to look at is, does my partner carries a temper? These are one of the signs that you have to pay attention to. As soon as you get in a conversation with him, how he respond back to you. Does he always flare off with a temper? And if the answer, only you will know the answer. And if the answer for you is yes, then you have to take your pen and put a check mark beside it. Don't sweep it under the rug if he is aggressive, because I've spoken to a lot of ladies before, and I don't know why. Maybe my wife can help me. And they will tell me from time to time they like to be in a relationship with an aggressive male. They like to be in a relationship with a bad boy, someone who just go up to someone and just because they say something to them and just box them up, and they tell me we like to be in a relationship with that. I'm not sure if my wife have ever come across people like that, but let me hear.
Well, I have never come across anyone that had a conversation with me pertaining to the fact that they like when their partner beat up on them, because it gives them a rush as to, okay, he's a bad boy. Um, but as he stated before, if your partner has a temper, that's something that needs to be recognized early in the relationship. And by doing so, by recognizing that, you will see later on how this relates to your relationship in terms of your communication with your partner. If each and every time you have a conversation, that person flares up to the point where he's threatening to hit you, that clearly is a very bad sign. You may now tell yourself, do I want to continue in this relationship or do I end this relationship? Firstly, I would suggest that you have a conversation with your partner pertaining to that person's interaction with you in terms of how he flares up each and every time you have a conversation. And if your partner is willing to get the help that is needed to fix that, then I would say continue in the relationship. However, if that person blatantly doesn't want to get that help, it's going to escalate to the point where after that elevated voice, he's gonna at some point put his hand on you. So I would suggest that you get out of that relationship if that person is not willing to seek help for their temper. And also, when it comes to physical abuse, which ties into domestic violence, it's more prevalent on the woman's part as to the abuse. The woman is the one that's being abused, right? Her partner is the abuser. And a lot of times, because of pride, because of you want to show the public or your friends and your family that this person is quote unquote a good person, you don't want to discuss that side of that person, right? Based on, wow, he seems to be such a nice person. He's well spoken. He has a good job. He dresses well. I would never think that he would be abusing you. So a lot of times as women, we conceal it, right? And there's also a lot of shame that goes along with this. And one very important thing why a woman would also conceal this and not discuss it, if she has children with this person, if that person is the breadwinner and she's a stay-home mom, that puts a strain on her because she now feels she has no outlets. He's gonna continue abusing me because I have no way out. I'm totally dependent on him because of the fact that I'm not working. There's children in the home. He's the only one that's working. But if you have the courage to say to yourself, okay, I was not placed on this earth for this purpose, then you should really seek help, because a lot of times the abuse trickle down to the children. It's not just the wife or the woman that's being abused. Oftentimes it now reflects on the child. It reflects on the child's personality, emotional state, physical state, and this is totally detrimental. A lot of times also physical abuse is I wouldn't say hereditary, but if you grew up in a household where you saw your father physically abusing your mother, or the mother physically abusing, because a lot of times we think it's just the man that's doing the abusing, but there oftentimes the woman is the abuser. So if you grew up in a household where there was abuse and that's all you know, or that's all you knew, oftentimes now when you get into a relationship, it carries over into that relationship because you don't know any better. So you think that, this is my way of solving an issue by putting my hand on my partner, which in fact it's not. So we have to find ways and means in terms of how we deal with issues in our relationship that will result in physical abuse.
That was well said. And as we continue, and signs in physical abuse, that we said you have to pay attention to the temper. And with the temper comes with throwing things around. You have to pay attention with that also, because there are times that you have the female said, well, he throw the things around, he break things in the house, but he never put his hands on me. My take on that, it's just a matter of time for him to put his hand on you. If he start to break things up in the house, we have to pay close attention to that. If he gets upset easily, let's pay close attention to that also. Now, if you see these things happening, what coming right after is that he's going to start to shove you. He's going to start to push you. You might even start a little biting, spitting on you, and all those things. And we have to pay very, very close attention. But one of the things, all of these are important, but one thing that we ought to pay attention to is when he's trying to control you. You have, as a partner in the relationship, as a female, you have no say. You can't go nowhere. He have to pick your friends, and even going out, he want to choose what clothes for you to wear. Pay close attention to that. And as we said last week, if it's a verbal abuse, then we have to start to make an exit. Some will stay until we start to see all of these signs past the verbal abuse. See all of these signs, the shoving and the hitting and the temper and throwing things around. And it will wait and the physical abuse itself to start to inflict. And then I'm not surprised. I'm just surprised that it didn't happen before. My encouragement to you is when it reached, I said go before, but when it reached the first time of eating, please start to make your exit. And again, um, I'm gonna ask my wife what she think about it, because I have friend when I was growing up, have told me that they like when a man hit them. It keep the relationship more secure for them. Um, it keep them in line, so they won't get out of line. But when you're just so nice and casual and easy, then you're always gonna have problem, they said, in their relationship. So from a female perspective, I'd like to hear from my wife what she think about that.
Well, that's a bit confusing to me, because I don't know why would someone feel more secure being abused. Maybe that person, as I said before, grew up in a household rather, where physical abuse was the norm. And that father may say to the mother, okay, you know, this is my way of keeping you in line, in check. And then you, as that woman, as that child growing up, see that. Now when you become a woman and you're in a relationship, you feel that if I don't get hit, if I don't get slapped, then my relationship doesn't feel normal, right? So I would say to that woman, she needs to get some type of counseling, because that is totally not acceptable. If you feel, being in a relationship, you have to be hit in order to feel secure, then something is obviously wrong. No person should feel comfortable being in a relationship, being physically abused, and think that, okay, it's the norm. No, it's not. That person drastically needs some type of counseling.
Okay, thank you very much. And I want to encourage you again, if as soon as it start, you make your exit. And I beg of you not to take back this person. The decision is gonna be yours. We are just here to encourage you, and we beg of you, if this person get physical with you, start to make your exit. Not to take back this person. I'm not saying that you're not supposed to help him, because maybe you can help him, that when he gets in a relationship with someone else, then verbal and physical abuse will not be one thing that he have problem with. He would already seek help for it. But when you should ask that person to take some time away. Be by yourself. Don't get in a relationship right now. Seek professional help. There must be someone, some counselor, some pastor, elder, deacon, that they can find to have a talk with. And if they have to go through some sessions, some classes, then you have to do that. But I encourage the female not to continue in the relationship with that individual. He must learn from it. He must realize that this is wrong. He must realize that I can't keep doing this. There must be a lesson that he learned from it, but not because he learned the lesson, you are gonna take him back. You would suggest that no one pick him up. But if someone wants to be in a relationship with him, then you can't do that. But they have to be careful, because sometimes these things don't really go away. They might become dormant, they might fall asleep, but they don't really go away. And you have to be, I encourage the female also, you have to be very, very careful because um, the abuser know exactly what they are doing. So when he realized that he inflict pain on you, he will turn around like a baby and he will even cry and beg you to forgive him. And he will also even try to convince you how much he loves you. He will go out and lavish you with expensive gifts and flowers and all those things, which he have never done before. But we have to understand that these are some of the signs also that the male comes up with after to try to get you to believe that you are the one who caused him to do that. He will even tell you, I did it because he loves you. But to me, that's not love. When you get into a relationship, you should get into a relationship because of love. Two people come together because they love each other. And love would remind me or relates to me of good stuff like support. Now, if you love me, you would support me. If you support me, you will not abuse me, right? When you said you love me, I'm expecting for you to show some affection. And if you don't show affection to me, then you don't love me. When you love me, it comes with things like I'll show interest in whatever you do or whatever you say. So there's no way you're going to abuse me and there is no affection. There's no interest in what I'm doing. And there's no support. So let's look for some of these things and pay close attention to these things. Don't just get caught up in the feelings, as I said before, and the passion. Keep your eyes open. Stay focused. I was told before that sometimes the female think from affection. When they start a relationship, a part of their brain might close off. And no matter what, could be your mom, could be your friend, could be your sister, is pointing out to them to show them hope in your eyes. This guy could be an abuser, but because she's caught up in him, then she don't pay attention to these things. And I'm not sure, maybe my wife can shed some light on this, why it's like that with women, some women.
Okay, before I even touch on that part, I just want to add to what my husband stated before in terms of the abuser being remorseful or being affectionate once he has abused that woman. A lot of times it's just being manipulative, being remorseful, but not being sorry for it. That remorse is not genuine. So a lot of times women, we tend to go back to the abuser because he inflicted bodily harm to me, and then he turns around and tells me that he loves me, and as my husband stated, would buy lavish gifts or take me out. But then the cycle continues. So as a woman being in a relationship of such, you have to make that decision to leave that relationship, because it's going to continue. He's going to abuse me today, and then tomorrow he's going to lavish me with gifts and, oh baby, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And then it goes right back to the same thing. So to address the second thing that my husband stated in terms of a woman being affectionate, we as women, we tend to think with our hearts versus our brain, where it's the opposite in terms of men. They think with their brain and not with their heart. That's why they can easily exit a relationship without feeling any type of remorse, wherein a woman will forgive and forgive, take that person back, continuously be abused, and then forgive again. So you have to get to a point where you have to value yourself, value your worth. Am I worth being in a relationship where I'm abused all the time? No. No one is should be placed in that predicament. You should tell yourself, I am worthy of a relationship where I'm loved, where I'm shown affection, where I feel comfortable to express myself without fear of being hit, without fear of being shouted at. So we have to look at the warning signs when we enter a relationship. If that person's voice is always elevated every time you say something, if that person is always threatening to hit me every time I voice my opinion on something, that's clearly red flags right there. So I would encourage any woman that's in a relationship where these things are happening to pay close attention and ask yourself, do I want to continue in this relationship where it escalates, where that person puts their hand on me? I don't think so. Because not only will he put his hand on me, it may get to the point where I may end up in the hospital and, worst case scenario, dead. So we as women, we have to value ourselves. We have to treasure ourselves. And no matter how much this person comes off as being, I love you so much, and being remorseful when the act is done to me, wherein I'm hurt, tell yourself, I don't need this. There's somebody else out there that's going to treat me with the respect that I need, with the respect that I deserve. So as we wrap up this evening on the topic of physical abuse, let us be mindful of our friends, our family members that we know of that are in relationships that are not progressive, that are not positive relationship, where they're experiencing verbal abuse and physical abuse. Let us try to help them as best as possible, because like I said, it's gonna continue. It's a cycle. And if that person that's the abuser is not willing to get any type of help, then it's gonna continue. It's gonna continue, and you don't want to end up, God forbid, dead. So thank you for your time. I hope this was beneficial to someone. And I want to say, continue to subscribe, continue to view our YouTube page. We have a Facebook Live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. where we bring about topics that are pertaining to our everyday lives that we would like for you to be interactive with. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for staying with us as we bring this to you. Let me turn back over to my husband. Have a wonderful evening.
Yes, and just in wrapping up, I want to thank my wife for coming to us one more time,
Thank you as
and
well, my
let
husband.
us know from a female perspective about physical and verbal abuse. We want to thank you for staying with us. And as she said, continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel that is Chat with the Jackson. And if you look behind us, you see we also have a charity program, Walking by Faith Charity Ministry, that we help people in Southeast St. Anne, especially in the Monig division. We want to encourage you, as my wife said before, to continue to subscribe, um, because pretty soon, as soon as we get our numbers up, we want to go live on YouTube also. So until we talk again, we want you to know that Chat with the Jackson love you, God love you, and we want you to be safe. Continue to practice social distancing. And until we talk again, we said we are
Peace
peace out.
out.
Love you.